Now then, here's a funny old thing. We're going to be looking at Topaz DeNoise AI version 3.6.1. Okay. Now, I've done videos on Topaz DeNoise before, and quite a few of you have said, well, Andy, why don't you use the raw workflow in Topaz DeNoise? And the reason why is because I've never quite taken to the DNG output of previous versions of Topaz DeNoise, and I've always found the output files themselves a little bit questionable. Plus, the thing that made me question it was when you tried to open the DNGs inside of RawTherapee. So this video is going to be about Topaz DeNoise AI version 3.6.1 raw processing and RawTherapee. And there'll be a little caveat at the end of it. Okay, so I'm going to just sit here in Lightroom, which is a strange thing to do, but we're not going to be doing any work in Lightroom on these photographs at all. I'm just using it as a visual file browser. Okay, now the one thing I do want to do is come to this file here and just highlight it like that. And I'm going to go to Library. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. Library, Convert Photo to DNG. So it's only convert raw files, DNG, full size, embed fast load data. Okie dokie. And it'll do its thing. And we've got a DNG file here. Now, as an incidental, when you do that, you think, oh Christ, I've gotten rid of my raw file. Well, if you actually come to the folder itself, where the now DNG file lives, and you go to Synchronize folder, you'll see that you can import one new photo. And if we click Synchronize, and just wait for it to load up, you'll see that the raw file is actually still in the folder, but it's actually been removed from the Lightroom catalogue. So anyway, I'm just going to click cancel on that because I want to keep this as a reference file for later on. So all I'm going to do is to right click on any of these images, and I'm just going to go show in Finder. Okay, so bearing in mind I do not want to use this 775 DNG. So all I'm going to do is just highlight these images here, and I'm just going to say open with, and I'm going to go to other, or I'll tell you what I can do, really simple, just with those highlighted, because I'd already got it fired up, I can just simply come up to Topaz DeNoise, come over here and drag and drop them in. Okay, and it'll open them as a batch, so we can now shut that down, and we can minimize Lightroom, and okie dokie. So you'll notice I'm on this raw workflow. So this is putting or bringing to bear Topaz DeNoise AI version 3.6.1 to bear on the raw files before we've done any processing. Okay, so this is an old Canon 1DX Mark I file, and you'll notice the values that are in here: 20 on remove noise, enhanced sharpness 49, and basically because I've got it on auto. And so what we're going to do is just a very simple, straightforward process using auto, and the only thing I'm putting in is to just remove 11 colour noise on the colour noise reduction, because you know it's a value, it's a relatively low value, just in case there is a little bit of errant extra colour noise, which you can get in the very low frequency detail areas, such as this background here. you can actually get it in the output render. So just put a little bit of colour noise reduction in there. Okay, so there is image number 1 processed. Let us now switch to image number 2. In point of fact, what we'll do is we'll select them all. And image number 2, as you can see, is, I can't remember what this was shot on. I think this is a 1DX Mark II. And it's of a muskox lying down and having, partially going to sleep. Muskox up on Dovrefell in Norway. And again, I'm just using it at default, but you'll notice it's used a different set of values for remove noise and enhance sharpness. We will go to the next image, and that should not be in there, but never mind, we'll just leave it for the time being and just let it run. That's now only 17 remove noise, 49 enhanced sharpness, and we'll carry on down the line, and we can see that we've got this one here, okay, which is what? Another little harvest mouse, and we'll just let that process through, rather like that, and then we'll come to this one here, and just wait for this to process out. Little Miguel, little Mr. Angry, giving me the old stink eye. And there we go, that's that one done. And we'll just click on this. And this file here is quite extraordinary because this is a Canon R5 shot off my friend Steve. Hello, Steve. And of course, for those of you in RawTherapee, you know that CR3 files can be an absolute pain in the backside with regards to EXIF data. Okay, so if we look at these recipes, if we just stretch this out, you can see that these recipes have all got different N and S values by them. All right, so we're just using the automatic side of Topaz DeNoise AI. So it's now saying save 6 images. Okie dokie. Well, I don't really want to do that because I need to come back to the harvest mouse, this one, and I need to say don't process that because I just want to keep this intact. Okay, so we're going to go save 5 images. So we're going to say yes, save 5 selected images. We're going to preserve the source directory. We're going to come in with an automatic file name. And this preserve input settings, I'm never too sure what this does because the little fly out there says apply the source image's file format, compression quality and colour profile to the output. I'm leaving that checked because it says the image's file format. Alrighty. So theoretically that should say they're RAW files, so they should come in as either NEF files from a Nikon or CR2 files from a Canon camera, but they won't actually, but we'll just go, I'll tell you that now. So we'll just go and save these files, we'll process them. So this is Topaz DeNoise processing, and I'm going to speed this up in a second, but I'll just say this. If you used to do this in previous iterations of Topaz DeNoise, when you tried bringing the output DNG files into RawTherapee, they had this, they were a little bit contrasty, but they had this massive magenta cast all over them. Well, as you're going to see shortly, that is no more. Anyway, I'm just going to let this chur away, and I'll catch up with you in a minute. So I'm just going to speed through this now. Okay, speak to you in a minute. Okay, so it's finished. So what we'll do is basically close down Topaz DeNoise, and we'll say close without saving, and there we go. So what I want to do now is to fire up RawTherapee, and there we go. Alrighty. So now we've got the contents of this folder opened up. We've got the original CR2s, and then we've got these denoise raw.dng files, which have been created by Topaz DeNoise. Don't forget, this is version 3.6.1. Okay, and we've still got this DNG file up here, which I'm going to come to right at the end. So if I go and click on this shot, well, before I do, you'll notice there's the R5 CR3, and it's got no EXIF data, and yet the denoise raw DNG of it has got EXIF data on it. That is a big surprise. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go for this really bad 1DX shot here. Now, yes, it's underexposed, but if we take it up to 100% and then just sort of scroll it down till we can see the goshawk's head, you can see that there is a dramatic decrease in the amount of noise in the image. Because if I go and look at the original, which is there, and we'll just wait for it to open up, and we'll just come in there and scroll down and just let it render out. You can see there's an awful lot of noise in this image. The ISO was 12,800 and it is off a 1DX Mark 1. Alrighty, so let's come back to the Topaz DeNoise AI outputted DNG file, and all I'm going to do is come over to the colour panel inside of RawTherapee, and I'm going to first of all go to the colour management side of things, and I'm going to click custom, and what I'm going to do is come and load some Adobe DCP profiles, and I've shown you how to get hold of these before. You can get hold of them by just signing up for a 30-day trial, which will cost you naff all of Adobe, and just go and download Photoshop and Camera Raw. You don't have to download Lightroom, because the profiles that Lightroom uses aren't in Lightroom, they're actually in Camera Raw. So all we're going to do is come to profiles. Yes, we will go back to there. We'll come to camera, and we will scroll down to where it starts to say 1DX. Here we go, 1DX. Where's it gone? There we go, 1DX. And we'll just open the folder, and we'll go for camera neutral, and we'll click open. And all I'm now going to do is activate the look table, which gives you the correct colours for the camera. There we go, and I'm going to activate the tone curve, and so now you can see we've got a much more enlivened image, but it's still a bit on the dark side. So anybody who's watched my 5 ways to lighten an image in RawTherapee, I'm just going to go for my favourite one, which is abstract profile, and we're just going to turn the slope up on that, and then I might come over to the main panel and activate lab adjustments, and just turn up the chromaticity just a little bit, just to get some of these greens back. And so if I come up to 100%, and then I scroll down, I mean, the image was taken in virtually the pitch dark, and there you go. That looks quite sexy, doesn't it? So let's go for another one. Let's go to, where are we? Let's go to this, Mr. Grumpy, and we'll come up to 100% on this, and we'll scroll down, and you can see there is the output from Topaz DeNoise, this DNG, and it's great because they've got no colour cast on them now. So again, I'm going to switch over to the colour panel, and we just play around with the colour management, because you've got an awful lot more ability to play with colour management and colour profiles and this abstract profile inside of RawTherapee. Way more. You can play way more in RawTherapee with this sort of thing than you can in the likes of Lightroom. So I'm just going to go to custom, and I'm going to go there, and we're going to come back to camera, and this was shot on a Nikon D5, so we will come down to Nikon D5, and I'll do that, and we'll go for, should we go for camera flat? No, let's go for camera neutral, and there we go. So we'll activate the color lookup table for the camera, and we'll activate the tone curve, and that's coming quite light. Let's change that out for camera flat and go back to open again, and that's just a little bit better. Let's now go for abstract profile, custom, and let's just take the gamma down a little bit and see what happens there. There we go. And maybe take the slope down a little bit. Do we need to? Yeah, that's looking a bit pokier. Let's take the slope up a little bit. Yeah, I quite like the look of this. That's looking all right. We can come back to our lab adjustments. Let's turn on lab here, and let's just drop the contrast out of it a little bit, down to like -5, and that sort of brings the highlights on the side of Miguel's face back into view. It's nice and sharp. We've got no granularity and noise in this somewhat out of focus background. I just think that is fabulous. Okay, let's go back to the old file browser again, and let's come to this Nikon D4 shot. Let's have a look at the raw file first, and let's take this up to 100%. This was shot at 10,000 ISO, and so we can see it's not riddled with noise at 10,000 ISO, but it is somewhat granular. But if we scoot over to the DNG output from Topaz DeNoise AI, let's come down to 100% again, and you can see we've got a much clearer background. So let's go over to the color tab again, and let's go for custom, and let's go and load up the profile for the D4, and come to D4. We'll go for D4 neutral again, add the lookup table, add the tone curve in, and there you go. Look at that. Do I need to say any more? I mean, that is just fabulous. Let's take it out to fit to screen view. Fan-dabby doozy. Yes. Let's come back to the file browser again, and let's go for the recumbent muskox, shall we? Okay, so let's go and take this up to 100%. Shot on the Canon 1DX Mark II. Come to custom under color management, input profile, come back to camera, and we'll go back up to Canon 1DX Mark II. 1DX Mark II, there we go. Let's go for camera neutral on that one. Click open. Yep. So you can see that there's been a massive colour change down here. So what we'll do is activate the colour lookup table, and let's put that back. Let's activate the tone curve, and there we go. Now what do we need to do on that? Let's come back over to the main exposure tab. Let's go and activate the lab adjustments. Let's take a bit of contrast out of there. Let's take a bit more contrast out. That's looking quite nice. Add a little bit of chromaticity. Come back to colour. And let's go to white balance and just warm the image up a little bit. And there we go. Hey presto. Look at that. No noise. No noise. Let's copy the settings by clicking this little icon here, second from the right. And let's scoot over to the actual RAW file. And I'm going to double click the RAW file and bring that into RawTherapee, and then we can come here and we can click paste, and that will paste everything that I've just done to that Topaz DeNoise AI output DNG. It will paste everything onto this RAW file, and you can see quite easily that there is the two images are as different as chalk and cheese. The RAW file doesn't look all that good, but the DNG output does look a lot better. Okay, so now we come to this image over here, which is the CR3 file from a Canon R5, courtesy of Stevie K. Hiya Steve. And we're just going to double click on the DNG output from Topaz DeNoise. Now, R5 profiles can be somewhat problematic. So what we'll do is we'll first of all come down to custom, and we will go and load up camera, and let's just see, have we got anything for a Canon R5? No. And this is the strange thing, because we can process R5 images inside of Adobe software, but I don't quite understand what happens to the actual where it gets its processing profile from. But if we switch out to Adobe Standard and we scroll down, and we'll come all the way down to Canon, and we get in there, here we go. So we've got an R5 Adobe Standard DCP, so we'll apply that. Okie dokie, we'll hit the lookup table to activate the camera's color profile, and we'll turn up the tone curve, okay, or activate the tone curve. So if I now come to 100% view, and I'll look at because this image has got a very shallow depth of field, but you can tell there is no noise in this image because it comes courtesy of the DNG output of Topaz DeNoise. If I go back to the RAW file and take it up to 100% and focus on the head area just the same, you can see that there is an awful lot of, I won't say coarse noise, but there is an awful lot of semi-coarse noise, and it is actually both in the low frequency detail areas and in the high frequency detail areas, whereas in the DNG output from Topaz DeNoise AI, if we go back into 100% and go and look at that self same area, you can see that that is as clean as a whistle, but it is a little bit on the contrasty side. So let's just come into abstract profile again, go to custom, and let's just take the gamma down a little bit and see what that does. Not a lot. That's made it go blooming worse. Let's turn the gamma up, and let's turn the slope up. That's a little bit better, and maybe bring the gamma down ever so slightly. Take the slope up a little bit more, and you can see I'm lightening the image, but in these areas of out of focus detail, in other words low frequency detail, I'm not bringing out any more noise. So I could go over to the what you might call the basics panel, and we'll activate lab adjustments, and we'll just put a few points of extra chromaticity in there, and let's come out to a fit to screen view just so we can see what's going on with the rest of the image. And I think I'm just going to go to highlight reconstruction. I'll switch that out to color propagation, and we'll just compress the highlights a little bit, maybe a little bit more, and that's just going to just tone down the whites of these feathers. I'm sorry about the gore, people, but this is a supreme predator, and you know, it's predated on something. Yes, it has. Ooh dear. So there we go. All right. So I did say, even though that we've got really superb images out of these Topaz DeNoise DNG output files, it's done a fantastic job on the noise reduction within the images, and I'm pretty certain you're impressed by what you've seen. There's only one problem, and it's this. If I come to the Raw tab, I can't do anything to change the demosaicing. I've got no capture sharpening. It's yeah, and the reason I made the DNG within Adobe software, because when I made that DNG of this mouse here, let's double click it. Don't forget I use Lightroom's library module to do that, but in actual fact what it's doing, it's just running Adobe's DNG converter in the background. So here is the DNG. It's had nothing done to it whatsoever, so it is as noisy as it might be, which, you know, on the whole isn't too bad, I don't suppose, but it is an Adobe software created DNG. Okay, and if I come over to the Raw tab, you can see I've still got all my raw adjustments, including capture sharpening, reset the demosaicing to either a single or a dual algorithm, and so I've got full-blown raw adjustments in every module in RawTherapee using a proper DNG. But as we can see, if we come to this file, beautiful image as it is, because it's nice and sharp for an archival image, and there's absolutely no noise in it. 5600 ISO, and you've already seen that the raw file was quite noisy. But at the end of the day, I haven't got any demosaicing adjustments, so it does beg the question, which I sort of part know the answer to, but I'm not saying anything. It does beg the question, is the DNG output from Topaz DeNoise AI version 3.6.1 still, is it a DNG? Is it a raw file? Or is it actually something akin to a TIFF inside a DNG container? That's a technical thing. You could argue that under the Raw tab, do I actually need to gain access to dual demosaicing? From an imaging point of view, no, because this image is superb. From an imaging point of view, do I need to gain access to raw capture sharpening? From an imaging point of view, the answer is no, I don't, because it's plenty sharp enough. And if we were sending this to a printer or whatever, we would send it as a separate job, of course, and we would do the output sharpening that we might require. Well, you can't send an image to a printer from RawTherapee, but you know, you could do it in whatever third-party image editor you like, such as Photoshop or whatever, or indeed you could send it over to Lightroom. But at the end of the day, from a purely imaging point of view, that has got to be the simplest workflow I have come across for just getting noise under control and using the nice, highly flexible input colour management facilities that you've got inside of RawTherapee. Anyway, guys, hope you found that useful. Hope you found it interesting. I was quite shocked when I found out that RawTherapee could now see DNG style output. I'll use the word style because they're not a proper DNG. They're not raw, let's put it like that. They're not raw DNG. So whatever type of DNG they are, for that, in my head, read TIFF inside a DNG container. I'm not particularly bothered from the technical standpoint. I'm just bothered about it from the imaging standpoint. And I'm pretty certain you're going to agree that, I mean, we've done no work in RawTherapee. I can save these images out. I could take them back over to Lightroom and just run them straight out through the print module. I could take them into Photoshop. I could do some masking on them. I could do dodging and burning, whatever required or felt I needed to do to make a lovely big print out of them or what. And don't forget, if you're going for super oversized prints, you can't beat for up-resing, where it goes resize, whole image, full image, Lanxos. You just can't beat it. So even if you are a devotee of the Lightroom, Camera Raw, Photoshop workflow, you should still have free RawTherapee on your system just to get hold of this Lanxos resizing. But you know, when you've seen what I've done to these images, I mean, we've done nothing. We've just used the tiniest bit of lab adjustments on some of them, but the majority of the heavy lifting has been done in the colour management tab. And so there you go. Anyway, guys, as I was going to say about 15 minutes ago, that's it from me for this week. Hope you found it useful. Hope you found it interesting. If you have, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. And don't forget, if you've got any questions, just go ahead and ask. Oh, and by the way, if I just come to my browser to open Firefox, because I know what's coming from some of you. If I go over to the RT forum, you're going to say, well, where can I get the latest version of RawTherapee from? Well, there isn't one yet. We're still on using dev builds. But if you scroll down, what you're looking for is this post here, and you'll recognise it because it's got a pin on it and a little bookmark. Direct download links for the latest RawTherapee versions. And if you scroll all the way to the top, there you go. If you're on Linux, Windows, executable, zip versions, Mac OS 10.5. That's for Intel processors, Mac OS 11.3. I think you'll find that is for M1 processors. And so there you go. As I said, hope you found it useful, hope you found it interesting. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, keep taking the pictures, and I'll speak to you soon. Yes, I will. All right, toodaloo.